But I'm going to show you how to go about changing the blade now. The first thing to do, of course, is to disconnect the machine from the mains. Always do that. Never take a shortcut. Do it. Then you'll find this tool, which is kept perhaps in the back of the cable tidy. I keep mine in a drawer, but wherever. There's a spindle lock here. You turn it through 90 degrees and it pops out. That means that spindle is now locked. And we're going to use the tool now to loosen the bolt that holds the blade in place. Now it's a left-hand thread, so you're screwing it in really to loosen it. So I've gone most of the way out, and now drop this down, pressing the on-off button which releases the blade guard, hold that up out of the way, and now you can take this the rest of the way off, like so, and remove the blade. And there's the blade removed. And make sure you get this round the right way. It should be this way, facing out towards you. If you look at the bolt, it's got a recess, and that goes in there like so. And you'll notice on the spindle here, there is a squared section, and make sure that the squared section here lines up with that when you're reassembling. So that's it. And now I can put the bolt back in, and finally remember to undo the spindle lock so it's now flush again. So that's now ready to go. Of course I'm going to show you the machine running, but if you've watched many of my woodworking videos, you'll know that every time I use the Kapex I sing the praises. It is brilliant. Now the Kapex is so good at doing angle work. It is absolutely brilliant, and you can see by these two offcuts, I just pop them together like that, and they are absolutely perfect. Nothing could be better. Just look at that. Absolutely super duper. When I do moulding work, I usually keep a small section which I can then use as a reference later. And look how fine I can cut these little slithers. And they're absolutely perfect. The finish on here is so smooth, it's brilliant. And here's another example. Whenever I make a moulding, there we go, I've got a little sample so that I can then judge how to set up my tooling again. And the quality of cut is outstanding. Let me just show you something that I've been making recently. Now here's a leather top desk. Well, it actually doesn't have the leather on it yet, but a pedestal desk that I've been making, and I think I've produced about 6 videos already. And the Kapex is one of the key tools that I've been using to make the most perfect square cuts and some amazingly good mitres on the base and so on. And if you've seen any of the videos about the construction of this desk, you'll know that a lot of the finish on this is down to the quality of the Kapex. Well, it almost seems ridiculous to do a demonstration cut with this machine when I've said how good it is in so many of my videos, and I've shown it working as well. But nevertheless, I'm going to do a cut through this 2-inch square piece of oak, and I want you to note 2 things. First off is how good a finish it produces, and the second is how little dust the machine creates. Notice my technique of allowing the saw blade to come to a complete stop before I've raised it up. That just does improve the finish of the cut. Now I'll try and get this so you can see it as clearly as I can, and there we go. Absolutely beautiful cut. And as for dust, well, let's bring you in nice and close. There are a couple of very minor tiny bits of dust at the back here. Let's see if I can pick those up. Let's zoom right in now and see if we can capture any of that dust. There's a tiny bit there, you can see a little white speck, and virtually nothing at all. Now, in order to do trenching cuts with this machine, you proceed as follows. There's a lever here, it's coloured green, which can be moved forward to the trenching position. And that basically is a depth limiter. You can see there the blade is not going down all the way to the bottom. And if you twist the knob on this, it will raise the blade to a new depth stop position. Now you have to bear in mind when you're doing a trenching cut that that is as far back as the saw goes, and you may notice that the center line of the saw is about here. So therefore that's where the maximum depth of your cut is going to take place. Therefore the space behind there is going to be a shallower, gradually shallower cut. And so that's no good for a trenching cut. So you have to have a spacer. And so I've got a spacer here, which you can see I've used and abused a number of times. And I hold that in place with the clamp on the other side here. That's it, held in place. And basically that is just a parallel spacer to bring my workpiece forward. I'm now going to turn my lasers on. I'm just going to get the depth set to where I want it, and I do that by just adjusting this knob until I'm where I want to be. There it is. And now I'm going to do my trenching cut. Now, trenching is the one area where I have a very minor criticism of this saw. And the criticism is that the depth of the trench varies very slightly. Please ignore this bit of breakout at the back, by the way. That's a flaw in the wood, nothing to do with this at all. But it's the bottom of the trench. And the reason for that is that when you're operating the machine in trenching mode, if you put just a little bit more pressure down, you can make the saw blade go just a fraction deeper. Now look, I'm a cabinet maker, and I expect to produce the very highest standards in everything I do. And this does not worry me. If I'm worried about it, I just take a chisel and give it a skim. And it's as simple as that. And that's the way that you should look at it as well. The number of times you're going to do trenching is so little that I suggest to you that you ignore this as a problem. Now the Kapex will cut pieces of wood up to 305 millimeters. Well, 305 is there, and up to 88 millimeters thick. Because I've got my sacrificial pieces here, I've lost a tiny bit of the width capability, but it doesn't matter. This piece of sapele is pretty wide, 280 millimeters. Let's give it a go. Well, that was pretty effortless, and as you can see, a perfect cut. And in thickness terms, this piece is, I think, about 76 millimeters thick. The Kapex will go up to 88, but I don't have a piece of wood that size. But just to prove the point, here we go. There we go, another perfect cut. Right, the maximum depth of cut is 88 millimeters, but there might be an occasion where you might want to do more. And this piece of wood is 117 millimeters, and I want to do a cut with the saw in that position. The Kapex has a trick up its sleeve, and it has a special cutting position. If I pull the carriage out like so, and you can see a green lever here. If I pull that towards me, there is a metal piece which is coming down. I've got my hand on it here, and that's coming down, and that's going to allow a particular catch to engage at the back here. And now the carriage is locked in this special cutting position. And that's it. So it's cut through that nearly 120 millimeters with no problem whatsoever. Now, somewhat typical of Festool, tucked away in the left-hand side of the casing there, is this really handy bevel. And this is not a toy, this is a seriously accurate and very nice piece of kit. And this is how it works. You take the bevel and open it out a little bit, and then offer it up between two bits of adjacent wall, and get the two arms so they are touching each bit of the wall. When they're touching, you then lock it by turning this green knob, and that's now locked, and that's the angle between the two bits of wall. Then you bring it across to the Kapex and place one side up against the rear fence, release the locking mechanism here, and then move this along until you get the lasers coincident with this center line. And I'll do it just approximately for now. And there we go. That's there. And then lock that off. And when you now make a cut at that angle, it's going to be the bisecting angle for that piece of wall that you've just measured. So you could have two pieces of wood coming together in a mitre joint in the center of that joint. And it might be some sort of moulding, it might be a shelf, whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. If you're a cabinet maker, the Kapex is a brilliant companion. And I often need to cut very small pieces of wood along the length of something like this. And I always turn to the Kapex. But in order to help me, I've got some pieces of wood which I've marked up so I don't accidentally use them for something else. And these are hold downs, and they've each got a notch in the end, which you can probably see. And the idea is that you would put one on like so, with the notch over the piece of wood you want to cut, and then put a clamp down, clamp it in place. You take the other end and put that notch in place, and then using another clamp, hold that there. That's now holding that piece of wood exactly where I want it. And now I can go ahead and do my cut. And my fingers were nowhere near that. It was perfectly safe, and it's produced a nice piece of wood for whatever purpose it might be designed for. Now, it is possible with the lasers that some dirt or dust might get up inside and start to degrade the quality of the laser line. If that happens, it's very simple to sort it out. On the right-hand side of the trigger mechanism, there's a screw here, and just loosen it off about 3 turns. No need to take it all the way off. And then just under here, there's a little plastic window which you can see. You push it away from you and downwards, and then it will drop down. And you might just be able to see a little bit of dust has formed on here. Brush it off, vacuum it off, and then very carefully place it back in, up in there, and then you give a sort of upwards movement and push it upwards and away from you. And then all we do is tighten up the screw, and everything's back to where it should be. Well, I'm going to end it here. I know there are a few things I've not touched on. For example, adjusting the lasers, or how to adjust the squareness of the saw if it gets knocked out of square for any reason. These sort of things are covered really, really well in a thing called the US Supplementary Manual. And you just do a Google search for Kapex Supplementary Manual. I'm sure you'll find it. If not, join the Festool Owners Group, the FOG, and you'll soon find all this sort of information. Now, I've had this saw for 3 years. I absolutely love it. It's the cornerstone of my work. Anything I produce has got Kapex written all over it. Everything comes square so beautifully. You've heard me say that many times before. I only recommend tools that I'm prepared to recommend to my very best friends. And I must tell you, I really have no hesitation in recommending this to you. The Kapex is a brilliant mitre saw. Thanks for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.